Thanks for joining me today on this episode of the Verbal Echo Podcast. We explore everyday stories, dive into experiences from real folks, and highlight transformation, grit, witness stubbornness through the human experience with a healthy dose of I can't believe that really happened to you. I'm your host, Monica Martin. Let's get to it. Hi, I want to welcome Amanda Kirkland to the show. After years of therapy and self-exploration, she discovered something called neuro-linguistic programming. This tool helped her reprogram her subconscious mind, release negative emotions and thought patterns, and heal emotional wounds. Amanda now works with clients, mostly women, who might be struggling with toxic or dysfunctional relationships. Using her lived experience and training, she works with them so they can start living lives they love on their terms and by their rules. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Great to be here, Monica.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this conversation. So how did you kind of get into this space of working with, you work mostly with women?
I work mostly with women. How did I get into the space? I followed a path of breadcrumbs the universe was dropping for me. I was in real estate development for almost 30 years. Project I was on for 20 was coming to an end. I had to decide whether to stay in the industry or do something different. It was the start of the pandemic, so I had sort of a lot more at-home time working to figure out what was next. And I had a business idea. I started working with a coach, and she coached a lot of coaches. And the thought at the time never entered my mind. I'm like, Amanda, that's not something you could ever do. And we started doing a lot of personal development work, figuring out, what our purpose was, who our ideal client is. And one thing led to another, and things just started evolving. And as I did my own personal work, I started realizing there was a pattern to where I was struggling most or where I had in my life. And that was basically toxic, narcissistic, dysfunctional relationships. And the start of that was actually in my family, which I didn't know at the time. Anyway, I then did training with Avalon Empowerment, which was a lot more personal development work. Everything I do with my clients, I've done myself. I'm proof that I like to use the line, you can go from toxic to terrific. So I am now a personal growth coach. And as my bio said, using my hard lived experience and training, I really want to be able to help other or my clients avoid the struggles that I did, because I strongly believe I lost probably 25 to 30 years of my, I'm going to say, young adult life, struggling and trying to change things that I was never going to be able to change.
Yeah, it sounds like it was a real unfolding process for you. You started off at one point and then it just kind of unfolded and layers kind of removed. And then you're like, oh, wow, what am I doing? I'm here. I can now help other people. And so you've done the work is what you're saying.
I've done all the work. And as you know, coaching is a lot different than traditional armchair therapy. I won't knock it because I went and spoke to somebody, every Tuesday morning for 20 some odd years. And although that got me through the days, it didn't give me any of the tools or the insight into other people's behavior. One of the things I now focus on a lot with my clients too is what role we play in the dysfunction. We may not be to blame whatsoever, but how we engage or don't engage or how we react fuels the fire and, feeds the monster sometimes. And had I known not to do that, not to, be emotional when engaging and, to set boundaries firmly in terms of what behavior I'm willing to accept, and then know how to, ask for it not to happen or stop it or change things or walk away depending on the circumstance.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. That's really great. It's really interesting when you do. I don't know if there's any other coaches out there, but when you do go through coaching, you realize, therapy, therapy's great, but it focuses on the past. Coaching focuses on your future and right now. And that's such a mindful thing to do, is to realize, okay, where am I at right now? And where do I want to be? And you said that you work a lot with removing limiting beliefs and forgiveness and emotions. And you call this, I'm not sure if I'm getting this right, but you said that you call this kind of like the quantum change process. And so I'm wondering how all that works in with what you do.
I do a lot of work with the unconscious mind, and whether you're familiar or not, your unconscious is sort of your neck down, and then your conscious is, the other 10% up here. And your unconscious actually controls the way you see the world, how you react to things. And your unconscious mind basically stores in its cellular, I said cellular, right, finally. Sorry, stores in its cellular memory everything that's ever happened to you, everything you've ever seen, anything that's been said to you, anything you've said to other people. And it basically creates the filter with which or how you see the world. So if, let's just say, all these awful things have happened to you, you may have a negative outlook on a lot of things that somebody else may not have that outlook on. You may react to things based on something that's happened to you years ago. So the quantum time release, that's releasing negative emotions like sadness, anger, guilt, shame. And when we do these sort of, I'm going to say, techniques, it's to kind of close your eyes, listen to the words, and you're prompted. And if your unconscious is ready to release certain, thoughts and memories and whatnot, it will. So it kind of lightens the load. It's sort of a freeing thing. And not sometimes, you get a lot of awareness about, what's stored inside you. And the same goes for the limiting beliefs, why, I'm not lovable or I'm not smart enough. And, we can dig into why we have those feelings and why they're ruling how we act in our everyday lives. And then the quantum change process is a forgiveness exercise, and a lot of it is really forgiveness of self. And when you are forgiving someone that's harmed you, it's not excusing their behavior. It's, again, lightening your load by being able to just express thoughts and feelings that you have about, how they've made you feel, and what they did to you. So that's kind of a quick summary of both those. And I offer those as one-offs. And they're probably a 2 to 3 hour process. And then in my regular one-on-one coaching, they're part of that whole package. And they're pretty cool and eye-opening.
So it sounds like it's a part of, that whole thing about the body keeps the score. Very somatic, Yeah, we
Yeah,
kind
I
of know
have that
that.
book on my coffee table right now.
Yeah, it's on my list. It's on my thrift books list. I have so many books on my list. The last one I just did was I interviewed Jackie Coben, and I was so excited. I got the Wisdom of the Enneagram, and then I emailed her. I'm like, hey, I got this book. She's like, oh my gosh, please call me. Please let me know. I want to know what your experience was. So there's a plug for Jackie Coben. If you guys haven't listened to that episode, it's so cool. She's such a cool lady, and I learned so much. But yeah, I think it's cool when we get these tools, and I think they come to us when we're ready, and also when we need them. So it's really interesting that it's interesting that every coach has something that got them to where they are and gave them a gift, and usually it's through maybe not always trauma, but we got to where we are because of our lived experiences. So I always just find it interesting, the work that people are doing, and how it affects other people, and it resonates with certain people. And those are the people that you can help, and those are the people that come to you, and so that you have some alignment. So I think that's really interesting, and it sounds like a really, really cool tool. And I've heard a lot about NLP before. I've never been trained in it, so I'm not really sure about that.
Well, it's a user manual for the mind. So it gives us there's a lot of learnings or a lot of things we learn in our training that teach us about the human mind and how it operates and how patterns can affect every aspect of our lives. So it's more stuff that we've learned to observe and pick up that our clients are doing, so to speak, that give us more information than you're looking at on the surface.
Yeah, peel back some of those layers.
Exactly, it is. And I mean, we say our clients come to us with what we call as a PP, a presenting problem. And it could be something like, I'm unhappy, except that isn't the problem. So, I don't want to say play a game, but as you start peeling it back, it's like, how is that a problem? Well, because I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. Okay, and how is that a problem? Because then I'm sleeping 15 hours a day. And how is that? So we start peeling the onion back and getting to what the real, and again, I don't like using too much coach speech, but the root cause is. So, when you were saying before, just earlier about, I don't know, sorry, it wasn't your exact words, but some people want to do the work and some people sort of fall into it. Someone could be in problem their whole life and just never want to address it. And then somebody knows they're in and have a problem, and they'll start taking steps to reach out and, not just read the book or just watch the webinar, but to actually connect with someone. And, as you know, as a coach, our clients work and play at 200%, and we make them accountable. And there's, consequences if they're not going to follow up on the tasks, for example, we've assigned. And we set goals for what they want to achieve at the outcome of their work with us. And the goals are achievable. I've done them. I've seen my clients do them. I'm sure you share the same thoughts on that.
Yeah, it's really cool to watch that process happen. And it all comes back to the stages of change, James Prochaska's work. Where are you on the spectrum of readiness for change? And it's really interesting to see people go from that lower level of, well, I'm thinking about it, to I'm doing this. It's so cool to see that happen. peeling back those layers and then folding. So I wanted to ask you, so you mentioned forgiveness, and I'm wondering if you have ever used the Ho'opono prayer as far as working with forgiveness. I know I've used it a few times, and it's so, like the first time I did it, I was just sitting on the couch, like just started crying. It's like, wow, this is really powerful. I was wondering if you ever used that or
3 years ago, I would have been like, what is she talking about? Oh my God.
I know.
I have not used it with my clients. I know exactly what you're referring to. And I did, some exchange work with one of my fellow coaches, and she introduced me to it. So, haven't used it, but yeah, the forgiveness, and I'd have to look at that poem again because it's been a while. Like I said, it's more about some of it's getting into someone's shoes and saying, I understand as a child, you were made to feel this, that, and the other, and you sort of carried those beliefs with you, and that's how you're treating others in the world. And like I said earlier, one of the big things that I do with my clients is, they come to me with a problem and maybe a person's the problem. Let's try have a little, and I know it's not easy in all circumstances, but there's a reason people behave the way they do. And if we can try to approach things more empathetically sometimes and with a bit more, passion or concern or understanding, maybe some of the people I'd met in business over the years who, walked into the boardroom and tried to act like bigwigs, and instead of me trying to put them in their place, I took a different approach because they may be hiding a very, like a huge insecurity by behaving that way. And I helped the situation be more difficult. It didn't mean I wasn't the one causing the problem in the first place. And I'm not going to take the blame when it comes to certain people. Like, they were the problem. If I had some knowledge of and better people skills, and realizing that, somebody may be behaving that way because they're insecure, because maybe they were bullied, maybe they were the class, I don't know what word to use now. I'm so scared of using certain words because everything's politically incorrect these days, but you know what I mean? So I think, I've developed it doesn't mean I still can't get triggered by certain individuals. Wasn't my fine form when I was just buying and selling a house the last few weeks, because I was having to deal with some individuals with personalities akin to the ones I used to deal with in the corporate world. And I'm approaching it from a new place, but they're the same. And it was a struggle because I was like getting almost pulled back energetically to that bad energy, and I didn't like it. So, in those instances, I didn't try to change it. I sort of lost it here, not on the person, or didn't try to, berate them for behaving the way they were because they were technically working for me. It didn't work in the past. So I just finished the transactions, and I'm closing those doors. I'm moving on with people that are more aligned energetically with, where I am now. And that goes, like I said, that's advice with clients too. And it's not one size fits all by any means. It's every situation is different.
Yeah. It's interesting that you were talking about presenting a problem and why people look for help. And I always say, if you could figure it out on your own, you would have. And it takes a lot of courage to get to that point where you're like, all right, well, this is what's bothering me now. My sleep is disrupted, or I feel like crap in the morning, or whatever it is that you're presenting. And that just gets you in the door. And then you find someone like yourself, or someone that can walk beside you along this journey. It's a really powerful process of peeling back layers and connecting with someone and finding your voice
and connecting. Yeah. And connecting all the pieces of your story together, which is to me what's so fascinating. And it validated a lot of my feelings that I was not getting, the validation for, or the emotional support. And, one of the things I feel very strongly about is, our right to be seen, heard, supported, loved, and unconditionally. And that may seem simplistic or altruistic, but I think if I'd had the emotional support and validation when I was sharing how I was feeling, and it wasn't dismissed, or I was told there was something wrong with me, that stuff I've had to, at 56 years old, understand that maybe I was this way because I wasn't getting this. And, the first one to admit, I wear what you see is what you get, I'm going to say. So I don't really mince words. And if I'm feeling a certain way, I'm going to express it. And I'm not one that keeps things all bottled up inside. And, I guess having British parents, and that was their upbringing, I was the black sheep and I was the scapegoat in the family. And that's how I carried on with everything. Would I change that? No. I mean, at the end of the day, I know I'm good and always have been, but there was a lot of other, shit, for lack of a better word, dragging me down.
Yeah, I like that. It's really authentic. You also mention the power of empathy. And I think, like you were mentioning, that whole scenario of going into an office meeting, and there's this person that's, that you're not clicking with or whatever. And then how you could step into that empathy to help you see a different side of that. I think that's one of the hardest things to do sometimes, because we get so caught up in our own experience. But being able to step into feeling how that other person might feel, and it really opens up our heart space into understanding what another person is doing. And it seems like it might be really transformational as far as when you're doing your own work, to try to feel what maybe something's going on with that person, or, maybe they had a fight with their wife in the morning, or, maybe they just lost their house, it can be so much, to have that.
I think one of my favorite books in high school was A Separate Piece by John Knowles. And I think there's a line in it. I've got a quote book somewhere, and it's you never really understand somebody until you've walked around in their shoes. And, that doesn't go to say, I mean, there's some people that have done some pretty heinous things out there. When you hear horror stories, or I know, we've had some shootings where you are in the States. I mean, in Canada, I just look at them sometimes and I'm we're so lucky. I mean, like I said, we have some things here, but when you go, and this is probably a controversial thing to say, but I'm just babbling. When you look at, say, one of the shooters, I'm not saying feel sorry for them. and they've done horrible things and affected lots of families, but there's also something intrinsically, I'm going to say, wrong or damaged, or there's something in their upbringing, then there's something in their parents, because somebody just doesn't wake up and go do that. And it's not that the understanding makes it any better, but I don't know if it just removes a little level of, hatred. And that was probably a bad example to use.
No, I think that's really important to say. You know, when I live in Colorado, where Columbine happened,
okay.
and I remember when Columbine happened, and it was so much in the beginning of all of this. And, my own daughter is a high school teacher, and I worry every freaking day, like, oh my gosh, and I I can only imagine what other people's experiences might be. But, this is interesting. I think it was a couple of, it might have been as far as like 6 months ago, but one of the podcasts I listened to is the New York Times, The Daily. And I love it because it's 30 minutes and you get like one story and they go deep dive. It's very well researched. It's such a great podcast. But one of the episodes they did was on the prevalence of school shootings and how people say, oh, it's such a mental health crisis. So I would encourage anyone to seek that episode out. And I cannot remember the name of it, but it's been at least 6 months ago. But it was such a deep dive into that whole saying of, oh, it's just got to be a mental health problem. It was really interesting. This conversation is taking a total left turn, but that's okay. But just really interesting. But yeah. Oops, you're muted.
Oh, I am sorry. I would say to the boardroom bully.
Yeah, that's okay. But yeah, so swinging back around, like, yeah, finding the empathy. Definitely, it's part of the work, I think, is embracing your own empathy. And I think we all, you always hear like, oh, that person is just, they don't have any empathy or whatever. I don't think that's true. I think unless you're a psychopath or a sociopath, I think we all have empathy. And sometimes it just takes a challenging situation that helps us tap into that and help us remember, oh yeah, I should have, I should have really thought about that other person. And sometimes it's those micro moments in our life where we feel embarrassed for something that we've done or we feel ashamed. But I think if you step into that and you go, okay, I could have had more empathy in this situation. And wow, that person must, there must have been something really going on with that. It's just kind of like a micro check in our lives.
Well, and having that, like, even if you don't have it, having the awareness that next time, or this time I didn't do it, next time I should. I mean, it's we're all works in progress. And
absolutely,
like I said, I'm still going to get challenged and triggered by things, even though I have the tools. And I know I was saying to myself, the house was closing and I was stressed out about everything because I wasn't getting the answers I wanted. And I'm like, why can't I need to use my tools that I have dealing with these people. And, sometimes you got to give yourself some grace too. And I had to give myself some slack because the pressures were high and it was a lot of change in my life too. But like I said, just awareness of our own behaviors, why we're behaving a certain way, why other people are behaving a certain way, really can diffuse, I'm going to say, some anxiety at times or discourse.
Yeah, absolutely. We are all works in progress until we die. You don't just suddenly wake up and go, okay, I got it figured out. It doesn't happen that way.
No.
We all, I can just think of something that happened to me 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was like, oh my gosh, I was such a jerk. Why did I do that? We never, and I think if we tell ourselves, oh, now that I've done all this growth work, I'm going to be this perfect person. It doesn't happen like that. We constantly, and I think these little micro moments gets thrown at us all the time, just as a way to like keep us in check and say, okay, now you got to work on this. Now you're going to work on this. You thought you had it figured out, but oh no, here's something else. Here's something new. It's just, work. I don't know if even work is the right, that might be too convoluted. I think it's just kind of a process.
It is. And, when I was saying I wasn't at my finest the last few weeks with a closing and a move, and I got on a call with a couple of my fellow coaches, and they're like, let's talk this through and see like what's going on with you. And I walked away going, okay, that makes so much sense. And it's what I referenced a bit earlier that I guess she'd asked me if these people, like how long I'd been working with them. And I said, they've been my bank exec for ages or my financial advisor for ages. And she's like, you're not who you were when you started working with them. And I'm like, no. And they're relating to you as the old Amanda. And I'm like, mm-hmm. So that's where I was referencing getting pulled back. Well, 3, 4, 5 years ago, if that had happened, I'd still be in the throes of all that. Now it's like, okay, let's figure it out and move on next. And those are some of the other tools that I find I still may get triggered by something, but I'm over it and out of it in hours, not days, not weeks. And I'm not having to retell and relive it with, a friend, a sibling, a coworker, the neighbor across the street, which I know I was doing in the past. And I remember someone saying to me one day, it's like, you talk to everybody about all your stuff. And it was because I didn't have any support. I didn't have any validation. I needed like help. I needed sometimes somebody to tell me I wasn't wrong and that, yes, the other person's behavior wasn't right. And I also needed somebody to explain to me that you can't change other people. And that's what I was trying to do. I was trying to bring them around to my way of thinking or, change the way they acted. Well, you can't do that. I can change myself. But, and by changing myself, there sometimes is a residual runoff and there you do see changes in other people. Sometimes there's no hope in hell it'll ever happen.
Right. We can't control everything.
No.
Can't control anything other than ourselves. Yeah, you mentioned, I think it's really good that you're tapping into that sense of community. Like you have your tribe, you have your people, you have your other coaches that you can bounce things off of. And I think that's really important for all of us to, you have your, regardless if it's like your work group but you have your core tribe, whatever that is, the people that that you can call and say, hey, I just had a really bad day. You need to have that social support no matter what you're going through and what you're working on. You need to have that support network. And that's such a really important thing to have.
And I honestly didn't have it until I started doing, work with my, like Avalon and doing the training with them. And, the community I met, and I think we all, I don't want to say former cliques because that sounds too high schoolish, but, there's groups that gravitate toward each other. And I've got, I'm not a woohoo person by any means. Like I'm saying, like who goes from being in real estate development and making 6 figures and having a senior level job to basically starting at ground zero? But I'm happy and I don't want to go back to that corporate world. I actually just got accepted to, I think it's called ULI, but it's a like a national group, and they put together, and representing the real estate development industry, they put together mentors and mentees. And it's a one-on-one, and you're paired with somebody for a year. So I got approved to be a mentee a mentor. And when I saw the list of people on there, I was like, okay, this is not me. I'm not qualified enough. And one of my first clients from 25 years ago, 30 years ago, coincidentally is on the board. And she wrote me an email back. She said, between your lived experience in the home building industry for all those years and now you're coaching, she's like, you're way more qualified than anybody here. And, I don't know what kind of mentee I will end up with, but I certainly, if they're struggling in certain areas, I've got insight and advice and tools. And, let's say you're working for a company and there's a lot of nepotism going on, and how to navigate that sort of thing. If you're working in a company where, you come in and it's small and somebody else is used to ruling the roost, and suddenly you come in and you're the, bright new sparkly thing, and they don't like it. And their behavior towards you is, not right. So I'm hoping that, I meet somebody or I'm paired with somebody that is running into challenges, or when I'm writing my bio, it's like, this is the type of person I'm looking for. Like, you want to work in the industry, you want to move up in the industry, but these are the roadblocks you're hitting. And I hit so many of them. And, it was a male-dominated industry. I like that. I worked with men fine. It was probably some of the women I had a harder time with. And yeah, anyway, that was just another little tidbit.
That's really, I really like that. That's so cool that even though that was like kind of like your former life, you're still able to have that experience because you've got so much work experience in that. Like, how can you just turn that off? So I think it's really cool that you're able to to be a mentor. That's really, it's interesting because it's like you're on this new path, but you also have this connection. And so you're able to support people with that.
Yeah. I have to say I fought it a little bit. And when you're trying to discover your niche, I've had a lot of people go, why are you throwing away all those years of experience? I'm like, I don't want to work that hard in that instance anymore. And, I don't even remember where I saw a posting. It may have been somewhere on LinkedIn. And I was like, okay, where, there's a women's construction association. Is that somewhere that I can, approach at some point in time and be able to advise and guide? Or, there's a lot of, in the corporate world out there, there's a lot of shit going on. And, it all comes from the leadership. And if the leadership's no good and they don't want to address things, and, it's not necessarily a huge company with a human resources department, trying to navigate stuff like that is really difficult.
Oh, definitely. Anyway. I worked in food and beverage for most of my life. And you want to talk about toxic leadership, an unhealthy work environment. Tap into the food and beverage industry. It is just plagued with that. And, a lot of my tribe, my friends they work in hospitality. And, even though I'm doing this other thing and I had to step away from that whole thing. I still do it. But I do it more for fun. But I think you get to that point in your life where you're like, this is so, I want just detrimental to my own balance in my life that you have to step away from the actual day-to-day of it and find a new way to still maintain those connections with people. But yeah, man, I get it. Yeah, it's really interesting to unfold in new ways. It's good that you can do that and also kind of trust your intuition. And it's really cool that you're finding those groups that can benefit from your wisdom and your experience and use some of your tools to help those people out.
Yeah, well, I guess that's what I was here to do at the end of the day. It's weird, but like I said, I would have never intentionally said, "Oh, I'm going to set out to become a life coach." Like, no. But I did not know though that, my own work on myself and then putting the puzzle together is like, okay, there's patterns here, and why was nothing pointed out before? Why was I not given, told that, your mother checks 27 out of 28 of the boxes of a covert narcissist? And why does she behave the way she does? Because look at how her parents were with her. And, having a better understanding. And then maybe being given some tools of how to approach that. I didn't have the tools. I kind of made things up as I went along in the instance of my family. And I estranged myself 10 years ago from my parents and one sibling, which was my boundary. And I had to do it for self-survival. And in that instance, I strongly believe even if I had the tools I have now, they weren't going to listen. And they weren't going to change. So, in that instance, that's what I had to do. With clients, my go-to is not walk away or estrange yourself. There's a lot of things to do first. And not all of us have the, financial ability to be able to do that too. So how do we stay in there without losing our minds?
Right. Yeah. Wow. What a story you have. Yeah, I've really enjoyed this conversation. So where can people get in touch with you if they're interested in learning about some of these tools?
I am on Instagram and Facebook at Amanda Kirkland Coach. And my website is amandakirkland.com. So pretty simple.
Pretty easy. Keep it simple, right? And you are obviously on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So you got LinkedIn, and is that just your name?
It's just my name. Just
Perfect.
Amanda Kirkland.
We'll put all of your links. And then you've also got some free stuff. You could tell us a little bit about that.
I do. I have an ebook, and it's 4 secrets strong, gritty women need to know to rise above toxic relationships, and then in brackets, without hundreds of hours of therapy. I always have to be careful because, like I said, not knocking traditional armchair therapy. It got me through years, but and I also have a virtual coffee grit strategy session, a complimentary 30-minute call. And there is a link on my website, Calendly link for that. And I'll send that to you too, so you can include that in the show notes for anyone listening that
Awesome.
might like to meet.
Absolutely. And, and I think it's really important, folks reach out to these people, and, reach out to me, reach out to these people that I've been interviewing. They have a lot of great, information and resources and tools. If any of this resonates with you, you've also been on a bunch of podcasts. And so I noticed on your website that you have links to all of those. So definitely check out some of those resources. I'm sure they offer, I'm sure each one offers a little bit different.
They are all a little,
yeah,
they are all a little bit different. I probably need to go on and update some because I think I've had about another 10 or so come out since then.
Wow, that's awesome. You've been busy.
I've been having fun doing it, really.
Yeah. Listen, it's really fun. I've really enjoyed getting to know a lot of people this season, and it's opened my eyes to some really cool information and different ways of looking at things. So I want to thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story. It's a really powerful story, and I hope that it resonates with people.
I do too, and thank you so much for having me on, Monica.
You are welcome. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. Be sure and hit that subscribe or follow button wherever you listen to great pod content. I'd love it if you could tell a friend about this podcast, and you can find any links mentioned by my guest or by me in the show notes below. Our music is Funk Beats by Ecolix, and you can find them on the Audio Jungle. I'll catch you next time around. See you soon.